Shaboom. Life could be a dream if I could take you up in paradise up above. Shaboom. If you would tell me I'm the only one that you love, life could be a dream. Sweetheart, hello, hello again. Shaboom, and hoping we'll meet again.
Hey y'all, it is your favorite nerdy girl here, Nerdy Girl Reviews, and I'm back with another recap for Don't Worry Darling, currently streaming on HBO Max. If you'd like to see and hear the full commentary, keep me locked here on YouTube. If you're watching this on Instagram, click the link in bio. If you're watching this on IG Stories, click on the link. It'll link you back to my YouTube channel. I'm also available on TikTok under Nerdy Girl Reviews, and so let's get into all of the movie review, y'all. It was quite the doozy. All right, y'all, be right back. Yes. All right. Don't mind my background. I know it looks still very Halloween-y because I still have to get back to a certain number of reviews. So, but this will be changing. Just want to kind of keep it in the orangey fall aesthetic, but I am trying to do my best glamour a la Alice Chambers, our main protagonist character name, played brilliantly by Florence Pugh. She, wow, I mean, I haven't necessarily seen her in anything prior to this, but she stole the show. I honestly am enamored with the cast, but specifically her. I think, however old she may be, wow, what an impactful performance by her. And not for nothing, but I don't know if it's her build. And again, it's like a very athletic build. She's giving me very Hayden Panettiere, you know, from like, what is it? All those like 90s, late 90s shows. If you put them together, I think honestly they could definitely be each other's doppelganger. But don't quote me. I'm sure a lot of people are like, no, there's differences. And of course, yeah, you know, they're two different actresses, but they definitely give me the same kind of vibe. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's their stature or their build. Nonetheless, both are beautiful women. Both are beautiful actresses. So this film, this is a beautiful film directed by Olivia Wilde, who also is part of the cast. I believe her name is Bunny. But just a quick synopsis if you don't know what I'm even referring to, although it was practically everywhere, especially the whole, not conspiracy theory, definitely the whole like scandal when it premiered at Cannes or Cannes, however you want to pronounce it. And there was some kind of rift between the boys, like between Harry Styles and I forget his name, Chris Pine. Where that Spitgate, right? That's all I'll say. And maybe I'll link something in the description box about how that scandal was just like all over the place, almost to the point where it overwhelmed the film or the content of the film, because now everybody just wanted to talk about that. But it was a distraction from the dumpster fire that has been our politics, which I think is honestly a great analogy. This film has been a great analogy on the concept of what people think are like puritanical ideals of society. And although we open the film in this picturesque fantasy world where everything is squeaky clean, and of course you're met with the perfect ideal couple, beautiful home, you know, sex on a dime, the cooking is done on a dime. It just doesn't seem like there's no bits of stress, nothing to worry about. The man is the breadwinner, the little woman at home is the Susie home baker, right? Like Susie, she takes care of everything, the bacon and the kids, and the cooking, and maintains the home squeaky clean, never gets tired, is always up for sex. You know, anybody would, like, in the first few like minutes of this film, you're like, you know, like how life really is and how gritty it can get and how painful it can be. You kind of want to live in this idealized world, but always follow that refrain or phrase, not all that glitters is gold. So, uh, so the plot is in America during an unspecified time period, Alice and Jack Chambers live in the idyllic 1950 styled neighborhood of the company town of Victory, California. Every day the men go to work at Victory headquarters out of the surrounding desert, while their wives, among them Bunny and Margaret, stay home to clean, relax, and prepare dinner for their husbands. The women are discouraged from asking questions about their husband's work and told not to venture out to headquarters. Margaret has become an outcast after taking her son out into the desert, resulting in her son's apparent death. Although she claims that Victory took him from her as punishment while attending a party hosted by Frank, Victory's enigmatic founder and leader, Alice sees Margaret's husband's attempt to give her medication. Later, she sees Frank looking in on her and Jack while they are having sex in Frank's bedroom. It is twists and turns, and Frank, is like God in this area, which again, a huge metaphor for how politics are working out these days and how sometimes these men in power have this godlike complex, and this is a perfect scenario of that. This film feels very reminiscent of all like techie advanced technology punched into one, with hints of the nostalgia, like even down to the color tone, the jewel tones of like their homes and the cars and the automobiles feels very Edward Scissorhands, very Tim Burton. But the technology that we later discover feels very like this could have been easy an episode or a series for Black Mirror. Very throwback also to The Matrix. The twists and turns towards the end, very Sixth Sense. Like there are a lot of reminiscent flares in this film that will remind you of those particular films, but it has its own voice. Like I don't want to say that it's like a copycat because it's not. It's its own story, but there are instances that you will recall of other things that seem familiar. And although at first you're kind of thinking, am I watching a film from the 50s? But then we're seeing a non-segregated community, which never really existed in the 50s. It was very segregated. People of color were in their own section, which were usually, the urban setting and underprivileged areas, often filled with poverty. And yeah, the typical white suburban neighborhood was surrounded by just white people. So we see a mix of colors here. We see a very integrated community, an accepting community. So it's definitely not the 1950s, although there is like throwbacks of the 1920s, because like when they do kind of like party, or they consider themselves partying it up, when they're championing each other or promoting each other, it feels very roaring 20s. So we go through a lot of twists and turns, and as you can see from the plot, Alice is spunky. She has her own kind of flair. She's happy though at the beginning of the film for a good portion of the film. And FYI, the film is relatively long. It's almost 2 hours. Well, it's 2 hours and change. And it's streaming on HBO Max in theaters, still in theaters. And the visuals are beautiful, but she can tell something's wrong. And every time she hums a particular song or she hears it from her husband, she gets these like instances of flashes, and you don't know what exactly that they are. And then all of a sudden she just out of the blue is kind of like bored and finds herself that she doesn't want to do what she nearly does every day, which is, make sure her husband has the breakfast. She meets the girls for shopping, heads to ballet, gets back home, cooks the dinner. And so she kind of wants to like rip out of that routine for a bit and is on a trolley, and the trolley literally just doesn't go very far. It's just like down a strip and then goes right back to the neighborhood. And she's like, no, I kind of want to take, she tells the driver, because the driver's like, no shopping today, and she's like, no, I just kind of need some fresh air, and sees a plane crash similar to what her neighbor and then friend Margaret had kind of maybe experienced herself. She walked into the desert with her child, her son, and the same little like instances with the airplane. Though we never really understand what was the concept of the plane. Maybe it's maybe it's something dealing with her memory or triggers, or maybe it's a sense of her own subconscious trying to wake her up, if that's kind of giving you an indication of where this film is going. And so she reaches, she's like, she tells the driver, the trolley driver, like, hey, you need to go over here, you know, what if somebody's hurt? And he's like, I can't go anywhere. Like, it's almost like he's programmed, like he can't go past a certain amount. And again, they've all been sheltered in thinking you can't pass this certain point because it's dangerous. It could be dangerous. And it's a metaphor for what you can think of as in the sense of trying to think outside the box. And if you think outside the box, that could also be dangerous. And you can interject, you know, perhaps ideas that the rest of the sheep herd isn't accustomed to. So injecting, you know, rebellion and pushing outside of that box, that can be dangerous. So she doesn't care. She still has that inkling in her to want to help people. So she goes into the desert, miraculously doesn't die or get sunburned, and she touches some particular wall and then blacks out and is miraculously in her bed, and she's just told that she just kind of like fell asleep, or you know, was in a daze and was, you know, probably hallucinating. But she notices something is wrong, and she starting to feel like enclosed or trapped. There are, again, these visuals that feel very reminiscent of like, even like What Lies Beneath, that scene with Michelle Pfeiffer. You know, there's like this camera that pans from underneath her, and she's like put up against a glass, even though it's supposed to be the like floor boards of like, you know, their home. And it feels very reminiscent of that. When Alice discovers something's wrong, and it's almost like she feels trapped, and it's like the walls are kind of closing in on her, and the glass, it's like, there are also some instances of almost like Get Out, you know. and I hate saying it because that has been kind of the staple in that type of thriller, suspense thriller, in the last couple of years, that everybody's gonna compare these films that are coming out to Jordan Peele's Effect, because it felt very much like that. But still, nonetheless, very entertaining. I've watched other things that weren't so entertaining and kind of dragged, and this really kept me captivated. But ever since she came back from the desert, she's like flipping out, and she's seeing flickers of things, and she starts, now this is the thing that I think they probably did this just for dramatic effect and to kind of build tension amongst her and the community, Alice and her neighbors, which at the beginning they were like hitting it off and everything, but not towards the middle of the film. And I should have said this at the beginning of my video, sorry, my apologies. This is full of spoilers. If you haven't watched it, then here is your, you know, flag, you know, watch the film and then come back. Yes. So this is full of spoilers. Anyway, so towards the end, as she knows something is wrong, now we meet Frank, and Frank has the very smug, you know, and this is what I don't understand. Now, I don't know. I mean, because this is a fictional piece, so is it supposed to make sense? I don't know, because if he really wanted to keep things quiet, if he is truly the head programmer of this world, why would he be an antagonist to Alice's character? Like, he's constantly like smirking at her. That piece I didn't understand. I was like, was he trying to sleep with her? Did he like her spunk and he wanted her for himself? walking in on her when she's, being satisfied by her husband, and there are moments where she doesn't stop. Like, she's just being satisfied and she knows she's being watched, but she didn't stop him. So I don't know. There's just some like tit for tat, cat and mouse game kind of going on between them. And but again, if he didn't want to be discovered, why is he like constantly like nudging at her? So all of a sudden, her husband, played by Harry Styles here, has that, really nice, sophisticated British accent and everything. They didn't ask him to change his accent for this. And he gets a big promotion, and they're like celebrating like the roaring 20s. And we see Dita Von Teese, which I love. She is like in her beautiful, pin curled kind of like big bouffant blonde, which we rarely see Dita, as a blonde. And then her traditional beautiful, undergarments, and doing her burlesque and her classic, I mean, she's synonymous with the champagne, huge champagne glass, and then she does this whole like burlesque dance in it. She's beautiful. So that took me out for a loop, like, oh my god, Dana. So it really was a fun watch. But we see Alice like crumbling, and she's like crying and almost like near suffocating, and she just wants to get out of there. And we have Frank, played by Chris Pine, like smirking at